Welcome everybody to our CRM Convo show on your screen, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, and friendly good evening to those which are in Germany. Welcome, Lars.
Hi.
Good to have you back again. And we could sing welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, like that famous song from that TV series Cotter. Lars, you are a CX CRM enthusiast. You have gained almost over 20 years of experience in international CX CRM projects and rollouts. About 9 years you have been working for various consultancies, and you have started from scratch, such as more or less student work and going into the entrepreneurship and supporting, then moving to inside consultancy. And with all these experiences, you are the one who is sharing a lot and self-educating a lot. So this was one of the triggers, if I recall right. You told me on one of the Shift CX events where we originally met, which was the move to write a first book under pseudo authenticity. So you will tell a bit about. You are now in so much in books and in CRM that you are a positively addicted CRM enthusiast. And you have written, if I'm not mistaken, at least 6 books by yourself.
I guess so, yeah.
And we are going now for the 7th one. And you have an own publishing house, Decado Publishing. And now, after having worked for TESA, where we had found a lovely teaser video where we had once a discussion on about data quality, which I still enjoy very much when I look at that YouTube secret tip to all of our audience. We probably do not know that. That is something on data quality. And now, being regular guest speakers in conferences, I would love to welcome you again to our CRM Convo show. And what did I miss out, Lars? Please add a bit about yourself.
Yeah, first, thanks for having me again. And I think you wrapped it up very precisely. I think the only thing which is part of my life as well is, which you did not mention, that I have 2 little kids, 3 and 6 years old, and I live close to Berlin. And the rest, I think you covered pretty well. I'm really a CRM and also CX enthusiast. I really love the topic. Yeah, without having it studied or whatsoever. So I really came to it by enthusiasm. So, but I think you covered it.
Cool. When we look to one of the topics we had in mind, and I've chosen that CX is not a sprint, it is a marathon, to be compared if you go into athletics or in running, and you have to be a patient enthusiast. So you are writing recently now another book, and it is more driving into the CX direction. And I'm a bit curious, such as a provocative question, why another book on CRM and especially on CX? What changed in the industry since your last one, as you published the 2nd edition of it?
Yeah, a good question. And I think it were 2 reasons. The first reason was the first book I published back in 2015. It was surprising to me that it was such a success. Not globally, right? Just in Germany especially, but it was a success. And it really was astonishing for me that it was not as fundamental as I thought it would be, because I really had the plan to write a book for people working in CRM and needing to know the fundamentals. And then over the time, and just spot-wise, I got the feedback, well, I need more fundamentals, I need more basics. And it was interesting for me because I thought I wrote a book about the basics and fundamentals. And then I acknowledged, okay, even I thought that's the way it is, but I learned that people need even more fundamentals. So I obviously turned more into an expert that.
Can you give some concrete examples for that? What did you consider fundamental that your potential audience already considered advanced?
Yeah, for example, I don't know if it's the same for you. Sometimes we use terms and just think because we get so used to the terms that we think they are self-explaining. But it's like, for example, customer satisfaction. Everybody knows what customer satisfaction is. And when we ask, what is customer satisfaction? Then really people start to stumble. But now I try to explain what makes a customer satisfied. So, and I realized that things that are, I would assume very basic, that I need to write a book where I define customer satisfaction. What is it? Where does it come from? What does it mean? How can you maybe manage it a bit? So, and then I thought about writing a real fundamental book, and then starting to writing it, I always thought about, should I include customer experience? Because what I recognized it, there are a lot of customer experience books, there are a lot of CRM books, but they're all separated. I'm not aware of one single book which includes both. And I thought to myself, if a marketing student, for example, starts the first role in a company, I mean, what is a marketeer starting in the job doing? She is thinking about, she is creating personas, she is creating journeys, she thinks about touch points, but where is she doing it? She is doing it maybe in a CRM system, right? Where she creates the segments for the customer journey and so on. And so I came to the point, also from feedback from other people that I talked to, that they all need to deal with customer satisfaction, with loyalty and the whatnots. But customer experience and CRM is both part of their daily work. And then, let's say by accident, it turned from a CRM fundamental basic book into something where I included both. And over the time, I realized in which direction the feedback from potential readers brought me. And then this is why I write another book about CRM, even if things maybe have not changed that much. But I really still miss a really basic book and something which brings both things together. And yeah, I mean, I have a couple of books here. I think you know it as well. There are always very specialized books, very big books, but they're all separated. So this was basically the reason for this new book.
So it's twice as thick.
I mean, it turned bigger than I thought, to be honest. But I mean, for example, if I give an example, this is, for example, a book I really like. It's about complaints. I mean, this is just a book about how to deal with complaints. This is huge, right? And the only book I found was for customer experience, really a simple book, and I really like this book as well, which is thin like this. So my plan is that my book will be somewhere in the middle. So that's something which is really in like a pocket book, really a book you could put in your pocket and pick it up, right, and work with it. Nothing where you need an own car for it or whatsoever. So, but definitely it became bigger over the time than I initially thought. I need to, that.
I know that feeling. Trust me, I know it. And it is 24 years ago now that as a task within my job, I had to write CRM in mid-market for Michael Brendel. And together with somebody from our PR company who was looking in the proper lectorate, and I haven't lost the attitude to create a lot of typos in texts I create. And so I had to have at least 2 guardian angels to have some opportunity to look over what has been written. And some of the material still is, to say so, not only on the level of actuality, but also stills still is envisioning things which have not yet been done. And this is 24 years old. And especially the mid-market perspective was something important to me, as I worked at that time for a vendor in the mid-market area. So I understand if you want to cover, read this book, and you know at least how to feel comfortable with your new CRM system and what you would like to do. But do you see your book as a do-it-yourself instruction, how to properly select a CRM solution for your organization?
Tough topic, right?
Yes or no would be a starter.
So the question is how to do it, or if it's covered in the book?
Is it covered in the book, how to do it?
Yeah, okay. So partially because what I recognized is most people are not so IT affine. They would like to partially hear about it. But in that moment, when I start to speak about technology, which comes easy to me as I am the team leader of an IT CRM team, so this really comes easy to me. But in most of the cases, what I recognize it's easier for the people to not directly get deeply involved into IT topics. So I focus on the general aspects, what you should think about, having a partner on your side, right? Stuff like this. But not as much as I did it, for example, in there was one book which I wrote where it was especially about choosing or picking up the right CRM solution. So not in that detail.
So one answer is I already have covered how to select a CRM system. Now I'm focusing on more the combination of CRM and CX.
Yeah, definitely. And I also need to prevent myself, right? Because this is when you blindside yourself with passion, right? You always start to doing research and investigation, and you would like to collect things more and more and more. But what I mentioned right in the beginning, you start to forget. In German, we say der Köder muss dem Fisch schmecken. I don't know how to translate that one. But in the end, I write for the audience, not for me. So therefore, I choose to not really make a deep dive on that topic in the book.
So in history, you were lucky. You have the right, let's say, prognosis, or you have the right crystal ball at your hands that you found a certain positive feedback, not only with your basic book, but also with the more techie-driven ones or the selection book. And you make a quote on your LinkedIn profile, the most read CRM book in practices in Germany or in German-speaking Europe. Are you following solely the Amazon statistics in comparison, or how did you come to that finding?
This is some kind of provocative marketing slogan, and you're not the first one asking me about this one. But I just recently had one person where I got in contact with LinkedIn, and he asked me the same question, and I wrote a long answer to him. And what I did is, yes, it is marketing and it is some kind of provocative, but this comes not only from the experience or from the figures I see that my book, the first book, was 6 consecutive years on place number 1 in Amazon and the statistics, and partially still is. So over the time, I sold a lot of books where maybe other authors have their highs for selling a book, but not for such a consecutive time. And what I also include are, for example, let's say announcement from other authors where they say, this is the number, how many books I sold. For example, I don't know if you remember Niels Hafner.
Yeah.
2018 or 2019, he announced that he sold 1,500 books of his Die Kunst der Kundenbeziehung, the first edition. So, and these are rare moments where authors or sometimes publishing houses publish their figures. But over the time, and I'm doing this since 2015, you collect them all, you put the puzzle pieces together. So I'm pretty confident about it. But to be honest, nearly nobody can prove me wrong, and I have a hard time proving that this is really the way it is. So yeah, and what I think for example, and this is for sure, I cannot compete, for example, with the book CRM. What is it called?
Speed of light. The CRM at the speed of light.
Yeah, for example, this will be a steady seller, right? Nobody will never compete with it. So so this is for sure. So.
And the author has a reputation that few of us can compete with.
Yeah.
Which is quite a good basis to have.
Yeah, he is an ideal role model, to say so. Yeah.
Yeah. But getting a little away from writing books to CRM and CX. So you said you covered both in one of them. So what's the overlap or the similarities of CRM and CX? Where are they equal and where not?
Yeah, I think one example I already mentioned, right? People coming from the university, starting in the job, they need to deal with both together. And for example, I think the both need to understand what customer satisfaction is about. Where does loyalty equal profitability? They both need to understand, from my perspective. I don't know if you agree on that, but I think there are pretty much the basics both have to be aware of. And I think still in the end, both would like to achieve the same thing, to get out the best for the company, and both have the hurdle to not be able to look behind the eyes of the person they are providing the offer for. So they're both doing their best to achieve that. I don't know. And this is, I think, a valid reason to combine both in the book. If I'm correct on that one, I don't know, because I haven't found a book which combines both in one. From what I see, I'm currently the first one. I don't know if this is the correct approach. To me, it sounds right, but we will see. Maybe I get proved wrong. I don't know.
So how do you define CRM and how do you define CX?
Well, I think there was always this complaint from the, let's call it CX guys, especially in the early days, that CRM is only from the organizational perspective, right? That this is just about thinking about my own company. From my experience, a little bit forgetting that also in CRM, customer service was always and ever will be part of CRM. So I think there they meet. And I really think that, and their customer experience have a strong point, that they say it's not only about looking at processes, but also providing experiences.
Sorry for interrupt, just in the mirror, I'm just looking at a black bear.
Yeah, I just saw it.
A black bear.
I saw it.
Not beer, but bear, yeah. Sorry, totally off topic.
No.
Yeah, but interesting, as we had yesterday, the discussion of where you are staying right now, that
the jungle.
You are in beer country, huh?
Not in beer country, in bear country.
Bear.
You are in beer country.
I'm just asking myself if you need to do something out there.
Well, probably get my gun. Big one. Anyway, so the definitions of CRM versus the definition of CX.
Yeah, I think basically I think there is a hard definition of CX today. I think for CRM we had more time when we speak about decades, right, to find definition. But I think really CRM is more about a structured approach of sales, marketing, service to jointly approach the customer to provide something where I think customer experience have a stronger perspective on the experience, and to get, let's say, into the head of the people So I think there I see the strongest point. And from my perspective, I didn't agree in the beginning that when this customer experience topic came to Germany, that in the beginning it was quite often a complaint about CRM not being sufficient enough, and this has been a reason for CX, because over the time, at least this is my perspective on it, the combination of both makes it in the end. I mean, if you're providing the greatest experience, but you lose the customer when you do not have any service processes in place, then it does not help you to provide the greatest experience, right? Because they will buy one time and then that's it. But if you have a great service experience, but you don't win customers, creating or providing no experience. So I think the combination of both, at least from my perspective today, is the winning factor.
Getting into my favorite, who's
I was waiting for it.
Who's responsible for CX?
Who's responsible?
And you may treat this as a trick question. Just a fair warning.
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure about CX. My first intuition would be saying marketing. In the end, it's all departments, but this was always the struggle already for CRM, right? Do we speak about IT projects? Because quite often they start with the technology. Is it a sales? Most people would prefer to say marketing. Tough question, I would say. And I think to provide a polite answer, every company should define on their own, depending on their customers.
So now you are giving the same answer that basically every CX practitioner gives. No one, and really no one, says the customer, except of me, by the way.
Yeah. This is something where I quite often think about, because I get the point that CRM is too much company driven. I get the point. I get the point that from a CX perspective, it makes sense to include as much as possible the customer. But in the end, I need to take care that I have that I make profit with my company. Otherwise, I do not have any more money to sell my employees or whatsoever. So I have a responsibility. And I think it's really a tough question. Where is the sweet spot where I need to have let's call it more CRM perspective, the organizational perspective, the process-based perspective, or where I, for example, say, this is really the point where we include the customer, and here this customer tells me what to do, and we should not always not forget, we cannot, when we start to speak about hundreds or thousands of customers, then we end in customer groups, and then we're back in CRM. So where is the sweet spot? Then maybe this is the reason why nobody can or would like to answer it.
Maybe this is just because of an industry-wide misnomer. Because what can a company do and control, manage, is half of the engagement process, which is, well, an engagement process has two parties, right? It's the company and the client, the customer. So the own part they can manage, but they can't manage, well, the client part. So like for me right now, I was totally amazed looking at that bear.
Yeah.
So this is something that you just totally and utterly do not have under control.
Yeah.
So, and that's why the only one in my eyes who can manage customer experience is the customer. The business can engage. Why don't they focus on that? And why don't focus authors? Adding insult to injury here. Why don't focus authors on that? Why are we pundits, all of us, strengthening this, what I would see a misconception?
And the thing is fascinating enough. If you go back in time, for instance, you have the realization that the customer interaction agenda, CIA or CI agenda from Phil Winters, he was writing a lot about that, the seriousness of the interaction and the thoughts, what might make a customer happy, and the real checkup is he happy? And going more and more, if technology is giving this this exchange of planning and reality, how the customer is experiencing it, going into real time and going into the smartphone, or going into experiences like you are in front of a window at a shop, and the window is creating something and showing you something because there is a link between your smartphone NFC and a former visiting experience, something like that. At that time, this was very spooky, but in the US and there was a lot of these stuff already existing. Huh? Yeah. We stay with it. Trust us, definitely. So it is interesting that you have here some thoughts on how to go forward, and that is probably an inspiration, this talk, to go into the book and give it a little momentum of the real justification of the experience is with the customer. And this might be an interesting clue even to differentiate your book from a lot of others which are written and unwritten in the near future.
I cross my fingers. Yes, yeah, time will show, right? If this is the right approach or not.
The thing is, I guess, that if we involve the customer more vividly, we have a lot of answers. But my learning process for these 255 convos before was that Thomas' favorite reflection is the experience is only delivered by the momentum of how the customer is feeling, thinking, and what he is reflecting. He loves it or he doesn't love it. So I can only try to create something from former, let's say, customer satisfaction surveys, or from pre-thinking and pre-engaging and configuring something which might work out. Yeah, but that is part of the risk. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you have seen it. There was this study, I think 4 years ago, which they did in Apple stores. It was some kind of customer experience study. And I think the results were really, really interesting, because what they figured out, they just visited a couple of stores. And then they figured out that there are basically 4 clusters of experience provided. And the first cluster was, if I remember correctly, it was a seller being under time pressure, which resulted in less satisfaction, which, right, is easily understandable. And then there was this transaction-based approach. So the sellers just focus on the transaction itself, which as well didn't result in high satisfaction. And what I found interesting, there were 2 other clusters, and one was an experience which was begeisternd. Let's call it exceptional experience, which they provided to their customers, which was ranked on a scale from 0 to 5 with a 4.7, so very well. But there was another cluster, and this they called formal experience. And formal experience resulted with a 4.4, which was close to the exceptional experience. And then they figured out that this formal, you can replace the word formal with process. So they were more process driven. And it turned out, and I found this very interesting, that when you try to provide this exceptional experience, you're dependent on the person selling, for example, the phones or whatsoever. So because in the end we buy from humans. So and when they provided this exceptional experience, they got a high ranking. But what if this person is having a bad day or whatsoever? And then they figured out, if they have this, if they have a process behind it and they providing things always related to the process, that the ranking can get very close to the exceptional experience. And this I found very interesting, because what I read quite often is you need to provide this exceptional experience, but people having a bad day or something is not working. So, and it could help to have a process in behind. And then I just thought, where is something where I recognized where they maybe do not provide this exceptional experience, but have a process in behind. And then I started to think about, I don't know if you are aware of the restaurant Blockhaus. They're famous here in Germany. I don't know where else. And I thought about, when I remember Blockhaus, I never think about exceptional experience. But what I know for sure is when you get your steak, precisely 2 minutes after you get your steak, you get the sour cream. Precisely 2 minutes or precisely 3 minutes. I don't care. And I heard it quite often that there's a strong process behind it. And I would never say Blockhaus is something providing an exceptional experience, but I know for sure what I get, and I know for sure when I get it, and when I get out there, I'm satisfied because I know what to expect, and the food is always a bit better than I expected because it's pretty well, and there is no need to sit very close to the fireplace to have this astonishing moments and whatsoever, right? You don't need it at Blockhaus, and this would, for me, is really an example where exceptional experiences are great, but you can compensate it with good processes in behind when the people have a bad day, and they follow the procedure. And of course, they might, if they start yelling at you, right, everything is gone. But it was very interesting for me that when we speak about CX, that there are variances and you can compensate human behavior, which is quite normal, right? So you have it a little bit in your hands, but if you accept exceptional experience and you go to Blockhaus and you expect something exceptional, and then you just see a standard procedure being followed, and this is what we cannot control, but Thomas, what you mentioned, then maybe you get out, pick your phone and give a, I don't know, low ranking because you say, I don't know what people like about this place. So it's...
And there's one more behind that. If you're saying exceptional, the root of exceptional is exception. Means if you have the exception as the rule, then you are sort of on a slide, right?
What I like,
a steep slide, because I mean, if you provide something exceptional once, then it's fine. It's great. I'm happy. If you do it twice, I'm still happy, and the third time I expect it. And well, all of a sudden, the experience is degraded. That's why this is another thing that I think that many pundits, practitioners, CX experts still have a misconception around.
and
what's a better model there than besides having a consistent process in your eyes?
Have you wanted to say something, or was there a question?
Well, the question is, what's a better model in your eyes? That's the question. It's not to Ralph.
Okay.
Ralph can tell me every day. You can't.
Yeah. I mean, if you follow the experts, we should always provide exceptional experiences. And this is where I found this study very interesting. And to be honest, in the new book, I wrote about something and I investigated very for a long time about it. You have the customer satisfaction, which is part of the customer orientation. So you can, if you have highly satisfied employees, if you have highly satisfied employees in your company, they are willing to provide an exceptional experience. But we all know how challenging it is to have highly satisfied employees in the company. So you need to deal with customer orientation and also with employee orientation. So, and I think not every company is performing super great in that area. So it always makes sense to me to have a clear structure, to have clear processes, how to provide services and products to the customers. And if you have highly satisfied employees, and if they are willing to provide exceptional experiences, this is so great. But having processes in place is always a good part to have, because you have this fallback option. And obviously from the ratings, a 4.4 compared to a 4.7 is a pretty good rating. to be honest.
Definitely. And the accountability you mentioned in the Blockhouse experience, and you could compare it with a burger chain, which is well known worldwide for delivering with some little differentiations in some sauces they put on their burgers to catch up the French taste towards the American taste, towards the German taste. That's one thing of the differentiations. But elsewise, you have an expectation, you have a vision of what you get as a burger, and this is exactly followed. It has 2 patties, it has some lettuce and the cheese and all that. So that is always driven. The accountability for the Blockhouse experience is quite interesting. But if you go for another challenger, such as we had the one about the experience, but those which are in real life and as practitioners working on the topic, that they would like to create something that might be a good experience, the outcome, how do they justify the investment and time and money, and how could they create an ROI case of that investment? What is your thinking on that?
This is, I think you prepared a lot of challenging questions for today, which I like.
If we had only easy ones, then we would answer them ourselves, and not ask an expert.
So I covered this topic as well in my new book, and this was really one of the things I think where I got a delay in my. I thought I finished the chapter, and then it took me 2 weeks more to investigate and to research. So what I found very interesting is you can do all those things, right? You can provide exceptional experience, customer experience is high, people rate your company on Instagram and whatsoever. This is great. So, and then I saw this evaluation, which are there since already 1992, I think, and they made it continuously. And I found it very interesting that they figured out most people try or aim for high loyalty. So what they think is, this is my understanding, they try to satisfy the customer, and then there is this understanding, the higher the satisfaction is, the higher the loyalty is. So this is, and loyalty equals profitability, which also from my perspective is a misconception. So, and it's already proved that the linear relationship between satisfaction and loyalty is claimed, but not really seen in practice. What they instead figured out that there is what they call progression relation, that there is an increase in satisfaction, and after some time, some more time, it's increasing with regards to loyalty very much. The difficulty here is that in that period, when the satisfaction increases and you wait for the loyalty, you are maybe not profitable because you have a lot of investments to satisfy customers which are not loyal. So the linear approach, the first one, is not really proven in practice. The second one is claimed to be good, but when you invest too much until you have a loyal customer, you are not profitable.
Yeah.
Third, what they call it is an S-shaped relation, which means it increases linear in the beginning, then there is a very high increase in loyalty, and then it goes linear between satisfaction and loyalty, which means after a short period of time and investigation, there is a straight increase of loyalty, which means you have persons being more less price sensitive. So strong indication that you're profitable with those customers. And then there is the number 4, and number 3 is the only one where they say this is what you should aim for. And number 4 is what they call saddle-shaped relation. It increases, satisfaction, loyalty goes up. Then you achieve it for a long period of time, a platform, nothing happens. And then maybe loyalty and satisfaction are increasing, which means also in the period of time where you're on the platform, you may be not profitable. So from my perception, what I would do is go for a process when it comes to customer experience. In the best case scenario, you have customer providing an exceptional experience. If not, you have the fallback situation of a good process, like, for example, Blockhouse, which at least respond to me. And then I would do surveys. I would ask the customer continuously, whatever the time frame may be. It depends on the time frame the customer buys. And I would strongly recommend to monitor if you have this linear increase, if you have this progressive increase, if you have this S-shaped or saddle-shaped increase. And if you see an increase between satisfaction and loyalty, and short after you see a strong increase in loyalty, this would be something where I would aim for, because it gives an indication that profitability is given. If one of the other appears, I would recommend to get directly in contact with the customer and try to figure out, is this a profitable customer in future or not? Or maybe even if you have the possibility to bind the customer with whatever is suitable for your company. And I think this is a way to turn the experience the customer has into satisfaction, into loyalty, but not loyalty with every effort and for every reason, just for the sake of loyalty, but for being profitable. And this, sometimes I get the feeling that this is forgotten. We just would like to satisfy the customer or provide exceptional experience. No, in the end, it's about profitability from my perspective.
Now you're saying ask the customer, which is actually, well, it's never a bad thing to ask the one who is the real objective here. But we all know that the responses we get from our customers are not necessarily so accurate, let's put it like that. I mean, if you're looking at an NPS or a CSAT score, they're checking some number for whatever reason. And this may or may not be right. And then there's this bias that regularly negative opinions get expressed a bit more than positive ones. So coming from there, businesses are collecting a heck of a lot of data. How do you see the chances of acquiring the insight about how profitable a customer may be in future, whether I gain more share of wallet or well, more share in general in future out of past behavior? That we are basically looking at advanced analytics, or in current terms, AI.
Yeah, I think there are two approaches. The first thing, so what I don't really like is just looking at the past figures and assuming that this is what will happen in future. So turning customer profit into customer value. So this is just, right, it equals. This is nothing where I would say, this is, I would not recommend it. So what I would do is, the first thing is, and this is something that is spread everywhere, you have the data that gives you the insights spread in different silos, right? You need to bring it together, you need to have data quality in order to have a profound evaluation of what's really going on. That is one thing. But what I quite often miss is that, for example, quite often companies are doing surveys, but if they provide, for example, an app to the end consumers, why not asking a consumer, directly involve him into a meeting and say, this is our app, could you please try out our app? Being on site, just really together with the customer, and he sees it the first time, and then you will get, without speaking too much, you will get directly answers from the customer about, for example, your app, or you directly involve him and directly ask him, will you spend your money in future into our products and services? But Thomas, I'm on your side. Maybe they say yes, and me no. You never know. In the end, it's, I don't know. It's, I don't want to say a lucky game. I don't know. But I mean, there are companies who are great in that, right? And I think it's, most people have really a hard time figuring out why are performing so great? And quite often these, what I think acknowledge yourself, in the feeds are always, this is what this company, Apple, for example, is doing, and this is why they are so profitable and whatsoever. But this is just one single perspective, just one single puzzle piece. So it's really a bit of luck as well. But in the end, I'm very convinced that you can compete in the market against the competitors with having this process, having an understanding of experiences, having an understanding of the relation between satisfaction and loyalty, thinking about profitability, and not just doing what I, for example, experienced a couple of weeks ago. There was a company coming back to me and asking for a workshop. And part of the workshop, it was planned as a one-day workshop. And they told me, and it was a really nice meeting, get together. It was great to see the people, what they expected within one day to have all the profound basics of customer experience trained. And at the end of the day, the customer orientation strategy should be finished. And this is where sometimes
optimistic.
Very optimistic. So, and I sometimes, and I sometimes ask myself, I totally get the point that they can estimate the effort of doing the workshop, learning the terms, whatsoever. But in that moment, when it comes to real CX, I would sometimes like to tell them, imagine the following. You go out of your company building and there are, let's say, 600 customers. And now you ask the 600 customers about feedback. And then you transfer this feedback in your company, get the feedback from them, give it back to them. What would you assume how much time it takes you? So, and if they tell me, yeah, at the end of the day, we have it, then I'm fine. Then okay, all good. If we do it like this, all good. But in the end, everybody would say, and I think there is some kind of underestimation of the topic, that asking, for example, 600 customers or 6,000 or 60,000, whatever, this will take time. This will definitely take time. And if you ask 600 customers, you will get so many answers that you figure out, okay, I really need to find this something where I serve everyone, or most of them, in hopes this is how it works out. So, and this is what people, I think, sometimes forget, and maybe they are not used to. And if we ask them, please go out, ask 600 customers, that they get a feeling, oh yeah, this is what customer experience or CRM means, really getting in contact with a lot of number of customers.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you do that trick, I have a second first name for you. Lars Brodersen. Sorry, Thomas.
Now looking at process. So now they have identified what needs to be done in order to get customers more loyal, more profitable, or engaging that they have a better experience or can have a better experience. You're setting up an initiative, a project, a program to do just that. So how do you suggest measuring success there? When does success kick in? How does it kick in? How do you tie it into strategic goals? Because, well, after all, that's where it shall end up as a strategic improvement.
Yeah, I can only give an example. I don't know if this is the pure wisdom, but I think there is one example which I can imagine or I partially worked out. What I like about companies or teams working agile, so not the classic approaches, right, doing CRM and waterfalls and whatsoever, but really working agile, whatever it may be, whatever methodology they use. But for example, calculating what is the effort for the company in money to pay all the people working in that team and focusing on the customer experience initiative, for example. And when we know, for example, within one month, this team will cost the company whatever money, and then they need to provide a plan, what they plan to do, and what not the output, but what the impact will be. And this can be on an abstract level. But if, for example, they provide an option that cross-selling increases the average GP or whatsoever to a certain amount, you can you can rely on that, because after, maybe not directly after the first months, but they hopefully commit to a result in 2, 4, 6 months, I don't know, which you can measure, and you have something comparable because the amount you put in for that team, and maybe this is a good ROI. Because in the end, I think it's different to every company what they would like to achieve. But here you really have, you invest something, they promise or commit to something, and you will see if it turns out or not. And for example, improving an app, or for example, increasing cross-selling, this is really something you can maybe measure when we think about monetary KPIs. So this would be one of my suggestions. But this is something where I have a good feeling that this could work out. But with all the other ones, like for example, I mean, there are NPS, CSAT, CS, there are so many things out there, but we all know what challenging times companies have to not only measure it, but following up. So the first example would be the one which works out best for me, if I can put it like this.
Now, initiators and projects are never in isolation. And then they are overlapping as well. How do you suggest doing an attribution work so that the result is attributed to the right project or to the right initiative?
I think the most challenging topic, I think for the most companies, my suggestion would be the following. Let's imagine a situation where we have one from service, one from sales, one from marketing, right? They all have their different KPIs. They're sitting together with one of the customers, or it's a bunch of customers, and getting their feedback. So, and in the end, I totally get the point. They need to fulfill their KPIs. But my question would be, do they focus only on their KPIs? So is it about them, or are they doing for a greater good for it? Do they really understand it as a joint initiative? And I think this is really part of the CEO work, to have this vision, mission, strategy, and values provided. And I think when they have this clear strategy and mission and vision, and they know that they are accountable for their KPIs, but in the end, they all pay into one system. They all need to work together. Otherwise, the company will not fulfill the vision. I think this is really part of the CEO work to make transparent. Yeah, we make you accountable for your KPIs, but in the end, it's about the company. So this how I would approach the topic of just every company or person focusing on their own. Just a suggestion.
How did you touch in the book another of our both favorites, Thomas and myself, the artificial intelligence touch? How is that changing CRM/CX?
I did two things. The first thing is what I mentioned in the beginning, I try to avoid to get too technical. So this is very important. So but then we come down to 3 points. The second point is that what I, for example, experience right now working for Hellman, is that we use these pre-built AI models, which really, really provide a lot of benefit because they have a predefined scope. But predefined scopes, right? Reading handwritten notes, transferring speech to text, this is so helpful and could be helpful for every company. And this is what I tried to describe in the book, not going into much detail. But what I also did for the book, I tried to involve a lot of people from LinkedIn, communicating about their topic, being an influencer on the topic. And I think I'm not able to describe the world in that one book, but what I do is I ask a lot of influencers about the topic to provide some guest commentaries or articles for their topic. And if it works out well, I also have one person being very passionate about AI and CRM together. So, and I think the best thing I could do instead of writing all in one book, that I give this place to one person being very passionate about the topic, where people then can get informed on his or her LinkedIn feed, for example, or his or her books or whatsoever. So this is the approach I have to tackle this topic, which I do with other topics like processes or whatever as well, to be honest.
Fair enough. Smart move.
A bit earlier, you touched on another contentious topic, actually. Vulgo, happy employees provide or create happy customers. So a lot of people, including myself, did a lot of research about this topic, and there's only anecdotal data. Do you have anything more? Well, do you have scientific data that proves a correlation?
Yes, there was an evaluation that turned out, and I don't really have the. If you would like the background details, you need to buy my book, because I currently don't have the author of the evaluation in mind.
So already 2 copies sold. Good done.
But what I know, and this was very interesting for me, most of the people, it's self-explaining that employee satisfaction can result in customer satisfaction. But what this evaluation showed was that the main differentiator for customer satisfaction in future will be secondary process support, which means if you, for example, have company values that, for example, support by IT for sales, service, and marketing is seen as valuable. They are second service provider, but this is where you have a difference in the market, because quite often, let's say, if we see service as a secondary service provider or IT as a secondary service provider to service, here you can make a difference where usually marketing and sales are performing great or very more or less equal to other companies. But with a well-running IT infrastructure, for example, in the background, which is my main domain, you can really make a significant difference. So customer satisfaction can be a differentiator when you think about what they call service delivery. So secondary processes supported by companies which are not in direct contact with the customers. So this is where employee satisfaction can really make a huge difference. And unfortunately, I'm not aware of the details of the study and the author of the study, but this is what I will also cover in the book.
Was that done by just qualitatively? Was that a university or a consultancy or even worse, a vendor?
No, but when I citate studies in my book, it's always minimum thousands companies they evaluate, or academic research is really so nothing like we ask 20 companies or studies. So this is really something.
Okay. Yeah. Also, well, no insult and no offense intended, but there are so many anecdotal things around that this is a real difficult topic. And you already said yourself can result in, so there is apparently no straight and direct correlation.
I think the minimum evaluation I have is which I citate in my book is minimum 600 companies where they included in an evaluation. So I really only take the huge evaluations which are very solid and across countries, because I think this is very important for most of the companies.
Now, looking at the time, we again had a fast hour. If there's an all. So, which makes it the time for famous last words to terminate the session and not the guest. Looking at the past 2 decades of CRM and CX, there's certainly a trajectory that might even accelerate in future. But in your opinion, looking forward into the glass ball again, how will CRM and or CX look like in 5 years as opposed to now? What do you see will be the most striking differences to what we see now?
I always try to avoid these Nostradamus thingy.
No chance.
No, fair question. But to be honest, from, let's say, looking back the last 1.5 years, what AI did with these pre-built models and ChatGPT, the game changer is already there. And I'm pretty, I would really would say not using it is definitely a loss in the market. So this will be still the game changer for the next years. This is what I see already right now, to be honest.
Okay.
Fair enough. We can't make you make the future. Only what you see in the future. So thanks a lot for this, Lars. And thanks a lot for all the insight and wisdom that you provided today in this hour. Thanks to whoever is still in the audience. And there is still someone in the audience, according to LinkedIn. And yeah, for all of us, tune in next week when we are looking into next generation CRM and probably CX to close the circle there with our guest, Clint Oram, who is co-founder of Sugar CRM and now semi-retired. Okay, thanks a lot to everyone, and see you next week.
Me.
Take care and